During our consultation, one burning question our clients would always ask us is, what do I look out for when I am trying to purchase or rent a property for a short-term rental? So this video is going to be taking you through a couple of things that are the must-dos before you go ahead and purchase your property. The number one thing that I will always tell a client is your location is going to be your moneymaker. Your location is going to literally make or break your short-term rental business. I'll give you an example of something that happened a couple of years ago. We had a client that was then we're managing properties for homeowners, right? And we had this client that had reached out to us and told us that, for context, he doesn't live in Nigeria. He hadn't been to Nigeria in like 20 years. Coming to Nigeria for the first time, he had purchased a property somewhere in Lekki. He then reached out to us and told us, okay, we would like you to manage this property for us, blah, blah, blah. Let's sit down and have a meeting. So we sit down, we have a meeting, and we're like, he's telling me that, the property is in Lekki. I'm like, okay, we're in Lekki, we can actually go there. He's like, he now tries to describe, and I'm like, no, that is not Lekki. That is like Ibeju Lekki, Abraham Adesanya area. So those things are extremely important. And immediately I had to tell him, I'm like, look, those areas are not profitable, they're not viable. You need to think about your location. Like, if you were a traveler, where would you stay when you visit a city? For example, if you're in London, where would you stay? If you were in Dubai, where would you stay? That is how you should think when you are investing in a place like Lagos. Where is it happening? Where are all the restaurants? Where are all the clubs? Where is it happening? Where is there so much social life? That is where majority of people coming into Lagos would want to stay, and that is where your Airbnb should be. So my number one location, I've said it 1,001 times, I almost feel like a broken record, is Lekki Phase 1. Speaking on the location, we now have to go into the type of building as well. So it's one thing for you to say, okay, your property is going to be in Lekki Phase 1, but what type or what style of building is it? In Lagos at the moment, a lot of our patronage is coming from domestic or local tourism. So you're having people who live on the mainland want to come to the island for like a weekend getaway, a bridal shower. People that live in Abuja, Port Harcourt, Benin, coming into Lagos for business meetings. That is at least 90% of our patronage. Those people want 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. You hardly ever find 3 or 4 or a standalone house. So I would highly recommend, for maximum profit, I would highly recommend you get an apartment. You don't need to get a house. We managed a house in 2021, a 5-bedroom house, and it was very, very hard for us to get clientele. At some point, we're even locking up 2 rooms and selling it off as a 3-bedroom house, but it was still very difficult because most of the guests that want that size of a home are probably like party guests. But how many times do people actually have house parties? It will not be sustainable for your business. So I would highly recommend a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom apartment in a building. Now, still on location, like I said, I mentioned Lekki Phase 1, but what part of Lekki Phase 1 also matters as well? Is it flooding? It rains like from May till September in Nigeria, in Lagos, Nigeria, for example. So when it rains, are people able to come out of their houses? Speaking from our own experience, we had a home in Ikate that would flood so much that our guests will be stuck in the apartment and would not be able to come out. That is already a downer. So you would find that people would ask specifically, does it flood in your area when it rains? If it floods, then best believe they're not going to book it. So imagine you losing multiple bookings from like May till August, September. That is a lot. That's like 3 months. That's a lot of time. And you have to be very, very careful when picking your location in Lekki Phase 1. So also still hammering on location, it is also important that I know that everybody wants a very secured estate, but there's something called too much security. Yes, a gatesman, a code, fine. But there was a particular home that we managed that was in an estate in the Lekki Phase 1 area that our guests needed to have maybe like 4 or 5 different codes in a day. It was so frustrating. And after a while, they're like, look, you know what? Please don't book us into that home anymore. Book us somewhere else. Yes, we like security, but this is absurd and it was highly ridiculous. So there's that as well. Security is good, but there's something that is called excessive security. Like, why do I need 5 codes in a day? The delivery man needs a code. This person needs a code. It's actually a lot and it's excessive. So you have to also look into things like that so that your guests don't keep bothering you for code. Imagine somebody is in your home and you're literally not asleep because you're trying to send codes to them. Quite frustrating, but yeah, consider that. Number 2 on my list will definitely be the facilities of the home. Don't forget, you're not the one staying in the home, so you have to consider, what do my clients want? What do the guests want? Based on our own experience, the one facility that we feel like every Airbnb should have in 2025 is a swimming pool. A swimming pool is very, very essential. Guests would always ask for that, even if they don't use it. A gym is also one that is a must-have in your 2025 property. Another one is an elevator for buildings that are 3 floors and up, so it is convenient for your guests to go up and down. Adequate parking as well is something that guests would always ask for. So for a 2-bedroom apartment, a 2-car parking space is more than adequate. It's good enough. Another one would also be the building infrastructure itself as well. So how is the drainage? How is the water? Things like that are super duper important. The truth is, you might not be able to get all this information just by looking at the property on the surface of it. But if it's a property that already has occupancy, you can just ask questions, how is the building infrastructure? How is the drainage? How is the power? Because a lot of all these properties, they claim to give you 24/7 power. And then next thing, they're talking stories by the time you make the payments. Things like that are very important. And then it's also good for you to buy from developers that have a good track record. Do your findings. You have to do your research. You can't just from wherever you are say, I want to buy like a 2-bedroom apartment, and then you just send payments without even, like I said, do your findings, doing your research to be sure that the developers have a good track record. If the developers have a good track record, there's more than likely that you would have little or no issues with the facility management. I mean, they're human beings. They're bound to make mistakes, give them grace and then work with them. All right, so another one will be the layout and the furnishability. So by layout, I mean, how does the home actually look? Our 2-bedroom apartment, I remember, thankfully we had gotten it off plan, and in the plan, the living room and the kitchen was kind of like, they had like a wall in between, and we didn't want that because we wanted our space to look bigger. So we asked them to break out. So they had put in the wall. So we asked them to break out that wall to give us an open plan layout as opposed to like a closed up layout, which obviously gives our home more space. So if you have a vision, right, you have to look at what the layout of the current home looks like. And if it keys into your vision, perfect. If it doesn't, and you have to do don't forget, you have to do a lot of breaking, retiling. If you have to do so much refurbishment, I would say, let that home go. There's so many other properties out. I know that we always diss Nigerian developers that they don't know how to build, but I feel like now in 2025, people are building better, more aesthetically pleasing looking homes now than ever. So you have a lot of options and a variety to choose from. So if you have to do a lot of breaking of walls and things like that, I'll say let it go. Look for one that you don't have to put in so much money to get it to the point where you need it to be. So another point that you should definitely consider before dipping your toes into the Airbnb business is the neighborhood and your lease agreement. 2 very important things. The neighborhood, number 1, because there's some neighborhoods that strictly prohibits Airbnb, like they're not even interested, they don't want it. I have a friend, I'll give you an example. I have a friend who had set up her Airbnb in her house, her property in Ibadan, and she had even already pulled her listing on Airbnb. She started getting guests, and then the neighborhood community came and said, nope, we don't want Airbnbs here. This is a family-oriented estate. They didn't want different strangers popping in and out. So if you're not doing like a long-term lease or long-term rental, they're not interested. So they stopped her from doing an Airbnb business. And I know that there are a couple of neighborhoods like that in Lagos, so you have to be very, very careful. The truth is, your landlord is probably not going to tell you, or whoever the developer you're buying your home from is not going to give you that information. So you have to be the one to do the research. Like I said, a secure estate is good, but there's some neighborhoods, there's some secure estates that do not allow Airbnbs at all. So you have to be very, very careful. So that's it. So if you want further details on what to look out for before buying or leasing or using your property for an Airbnb or short-term rental, get at us. We offer a paid consultation and we can sit you down and talk to you about this in more detail. So we'll see you in our next video. Bye.